The Teamwork Arts Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we try and figure out the thoughts that animate the actions of those who make the arts and the art of making someone laugh. That's something that Abish has studied and then practiced for a while. He's responsible for putting a lot of smiles on faces that could certainly do with a lot of smiles, and especially in these strange, bizarre times. So it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast, Abish. Thank you very much for your time. And it's been a while since we last spoke, and since then, two pandemics, wave upon wave of misery.
Yes.
How does that all feel?
It all feels good, but I think I want to make something very clear to a lot of people who are watching, okay? Especially if you're watching this. You need to understand that maybe some of you know me from like now because of like, whatever work I've done in comedy. And comedy picked up, so, as part of the bandwagon, we all grew. But Sarthak has seen me study comedy. There is, like, Sarthak and I worked at the same radio station, and I've been telling him that I want to do stand-up, but I would never do. I will overthink, research, analyze. I will do everything possible academically to be like, effort to maar diya, chal, you're fine with your job.
Yes, it's true actually. I still remember those times when we were like, okay, you have studied comedy, but what about implementation of what you said?
That's why when you introduced me and you said somebody who has studied comedy, nobody in my entire career as a stand-up comedian other than you have said that he studied comedy. Yeah, exactly. I've studied comedy.
See, but the thing is that's the thing. And not only have you studied comedy, but you take comedy seriously enough to actually try and tell people, the journey of a joke, which is something that you've done in so many words. People would think that telling a joke basically means that failing at other professions and then going to stand-up comedy, because a lot of people make a virtue of the fact that they had failed in other professions and then started comedy. But you've actually never really failed. I mean, radio was a fairly successful stint, and then of course the 24/7 hard work that goes behind the making of a stand-up comic that nobody seems to see in these times. No, take us through the journey a little. No.
The journey into being a stand-up comedian specifically, it's like, I don't think the journey started as much as it just, it swayed in, and at a certain time it picked in. Like I keep saying that even in radio, when I got hired, of course, one of the main reasons I got hired is because I didn't ask for more money. I was happy with whatever was being given. So they were like, say, yeah, young, he's fine, he's affordable. Plus the thing was, there was always a sense of, I want to be funny. I was very interested in not being, okay, let's talk about deep issues and policies and, where is this? Not journalistic. That's not my mode of communication. My mode of communication isn't also as talented as a musician. Like, sometimes musicians take like months or years to craft an album to tell what they're feeling. I found the simplest way to communicate, which was, for me, was stand-up comedy. And I think because it was just simple, it's write something and try to make someone laugh. And I also like talking and making people laugh, which is why when I came into radio and following you as a radio mentor, like you were following, like I was seeing how you do it, and then I was trying to see that how can I do it? Oh, this is how the professionals do it, so this is how you would do it. That same thing implied to stand-up is what I would say. But I think the journey was, I was always trying to be funny in front of my cousins. They found it annoying. I was trying to be funny in front of my brother. He found it annoying. Till I found some people in college who were like, yeah, he's funny and annoying. Then radio, like all my friends in radio are like, he's annoying, but he's affordably annoying. Then from there, it's just like a bunch of comedians we found in a writing room. They're like, he's annoying, but he's funny and annoying, I guess. Then I think so for me, it's always balancing between the two.
But I think a couple of generations actually grew up on a steady diet of late night television, which sort of defined the way that we looked at comedy. There were also the likes of Mad Magazine and Punch, etc. that were sort of shaping our comedy in that way. But in comedy, I think the important part is finding your voice, right? So was that difficult to do, easy to do? How did that happen? Were you too influenced in the beginning?
The thing is, because again, you're right. 2008 when I started stand up, right? I was working as a radio host with you, and there was no book about how to be a stand up comedian. There were no open mics. There was no
Yeah.
way to be a stand up comedian. Now
Sure.
there are ways to become a stand up comedian. Everyone, okay, standard is that if you're new and if you have no context of this, the best thing is to see if there are any local comedy producers who are text of this. The best thing is to see if there are any local comedy producers who are organizing open mics and other shows. Start going and attending those to see how to do it. Not the how you do a joke, but what the system is. You apply the first time, you see, like people need to know that it's not stand up is not where you talk to the comedian, it's a monologue. So just as a new art form, take a few shows to see if it's an area of interest. Then you go and register for open mics, get your 2 minutes, get to know the people around, because the people around is who would be like, hey, I have another show, would you like to do 2 minutes? I just need 10 people to perform. So you come be part of a community and a network. From there, few pop out because of social media strength, or like other very talented at doing something else, and it brings light back to stand up. So that's how to do it. But in our time, none of that was there. So it was mostly this going directly, which is I was working with Sarthak at that time, and two different venues. We had to personally, like, some people at the office also had to call up, and like Big Chili's, or not Big Chili's, or something else, and TLR also,
Yes.
the living room. So to organize a show, but it can't just be stand up. So it was like a vaudeville show where there were a lot of dancers, a lot of music, and I was hosting it because of, I would say, radio experience, but with jokes thrown in it. Same thing what I used to do in radio. So it wasn't a full out stand up. But because we did that and everybody at that time was doing the same thing, now we have a community, or like a system to become a stand up comedian. So I think what we did was to create what could be, not what we did, what happened organically when we were trying to build something was it grew. A lot of people were interested in coming and joining.
For sure. And that's the thing. I think when you started stand-up comedy, at that point of time, the live stage was very much a music stage. If you were thinking of live performances, nobody would actually think of a stand-up comic being the showstopper in that way. It was purely music, but that struggle must have been because you actually shifted from Delhi to Mumbai to sort of very seriously pursue the career. And was that a hard transition to make? Because you were pretty much, if I remember, you were pretty much working 24/7 to sort of push open that space, to push open those doors.
Man, I have to give credit to number one, the 895 FM team, including Neetu, because I'll tell you what used to happen, okay? I'm going to say it, Sarthak. I don't know if you know this. I think he can't officially accept or deny whether you know this. I might be breaking legal contracts here, okay? So, but like, hopefully goodwill continues. So because I started getting interested in stand-up before I came to radio, and then I remember Neetu ma'am had said that till the time you don't want to go to TV and use radio as an opportunity, because people who want to do that, they don't respect the radio format, which is a very different format than a video format. So I was like, yeah, I like doing voice acting, which is where I came from, because I used to do voiceovers, and I like to do stand-up. I want to do stand-up. And Neetu was like, okay, cool, he wants to do stand-up, right? So a year into understanding, I was bad at radio, like quite a bit, because I remember Sarthak has corrected me this also. On 3 months into an English music radio, one of the finest artists in the world, I was mispronouncing his name. His name was Kanye West, and I used to call him Kanye West, okay, because I am Noida boy, which South Delhi Sarthak and Gurgaon Neetu had forgotten. So somewhere they're like, yeah, his Catholic upbringing will fix his accent, but no. So Sarthak reprimanded, and of course I remember that. But what used to happen was, after a year or 2 years into radio, open mics used to start at like 9 p.m. and I was working in Gurgaon. They were in like South Delhi or like Nehru Place or something. So if I go there, I'm right at the end of everyone's performance. So I might miss it. So I had to do 4 links in an hour. Okay. All of those links had to be at like 15-minute interval. So I used to do 2 links live, record 1 link, delete one link, automate the system, and leave. I had a deal with Sanjay, and everyone said, please don't tell anyone. And they were also like, take it till the time. It's just one link that I'm missing for an opportunity I'll get and open my card, otherwise I'll miss it. So I knew that was unethical, but I'm like, just one link. And I think that kind of gave me like that thing of going on stage again and again. So that working 24 hours was only because there was just an overlap that happened between the two professions. Evening jock and stand-up happens at night. So that became my schedule.
That's an incredibly cool story. Actually, people will be like, "Wow, radio, the live stage, wow, so cool." But and that is a bit of a problem because people don't realize how much hard work it takes to reach where you have reached. Because it is about instant fame. It is about the Instagram generation, for lack of a better way of explaining it, where everything seems like it happens in the snap of the finger, but it takes a lot of hard work, and I think more importantly, it takes a pretty thick skin to take the days that have bombed. No, Abish?
Oh man! Oh please, yo, okay. Here's the thing about I think the arts. Okay, it's not like the regular economy where everything goes like you're looking at each of it to go up like this. You are gonna have this on a daily basis. But when you zoom out to your yearly progress, you will see that the small struggles of this has actually exponentially gone like this. So it doesn't become, it takes some time and then it goes up like that. So to stick to a form of art till the time, like in the sense when you say I worked really hard, I don't feel I worked hard. I had no other option because I was so like passionate. You know what I mean? It beautifully timed in a part of my life where I could afford to do it. The family had told, they didn't put any undue pressure. This is already like too much to have. So that's such a great advantage that it didn't seem like hard work. It seemed like this is amazing, which is why I think like today, if you put me on stage, I'll be so happy. But if you ask me to create a reel every day, I'd be like, I haven't found what gives me joy from there yet. But every now and then I think of something that's interesting. Gives me joy to create it and I put it out. So that consistency, that entire thing about you got to be consistent and this and that, it works completely. But the thing is, I want to try a different approach. And I think that's what finding your voice is. Nobody ever finds their voice in their arts. The journey to find and explore is the voice itself. So there's no end target. It's just one thing to the next destination, trying different things that is coming to you and the best that you can make it. So I'm a stand-up comedian today. I don't know what I'll be tomorrow because yesterday I was an RJ. Before that I was annoying kid with cousins. Before that I was annoying baby. So it's just a transition of what people call you. So for now, I'll take stand-up comedian. Tomorrow, you'll see me as the dictator of the world.
Okay. But listen, you remember your first sets? You remember creating your first sets?
Painfully so. Oh, it's the first time you got... Of course, there are analogies which people say the first time you're on stage is very similar to the first time you had... you made love with somebody. This is Teamwork Arts Podcast. I need to maintain my tongue. Good evening. The first time you ever... It's like you remember it because it wasn't perfect. But it felt great. And it felt new. So that's the newness of like, there's something... Because you're too nervous for it to go great. But you're too absorbent of all the other emotions. And if it works for you, then it's like really good to try that out. And I feel like that's what I feel like the essence of it is that you have to find happiness in what you're doing in this.
Sure. There's also, Abish, the thing that, obviously art is such a subjective matter that everyone has, and especially creating art is just such a subjective thing because everyone has their own way of doing it. What is your process of making your material? I mean, take us through, if there are steps or how you do that, take us through how you make your material.
Okay, so the method of writing a joke if you try to replicate that for the next one, it probably would not work, because all of these sets are individually, they're almost like pieces that are their joke engine, or the engine is different. Like if you're a comedian who says it's like this, after that set it just seems very formulaic. So there are formulaic ways of writing a good punchline that can work as a good tweet, that can work probably, giving somebody else to read, like new weekend update. But a stand-up comedy set is very different, because stand-up comedy is not the art form of just telling a setup punchline joke. Stand-up comedy is a performing art of making an audience laugh, of course with original material. Let it not be best of covers. So some people use words, some people use a lot more performance, some people use anecdotes, some people are observing, but a lot of us are mixing it all together because we all don't want to do one type of it. So I think the formula to the formula would be the like a wrong word to approach it from my end. I think it would just be, what are you feeling right now? And if you have nothing to write about, it's like, what are you feeling right now? And talk to yourself, or write down, or record. Because when you revisit the second time, you'll be like, it's not funny enough. So then you'll make edits. And then from like a 10-minute recording or a 10-page, you would delete and keep half a page, which is interesting. Not amazing, just interesting. Then you revisit it a little later, and then you see, amongst those interesting things, what are new jokes you can think of, and you build it slowly. So it's like you adding more yeast to a very small little bit of dahi. You're putting a little bit of dahi to make more dahi, and then you put a little bit more dahi to make more dahi. So it's just, you're making dahi. Is the only way I can say.
I love the fact that the pandemic has made you a cook to the extent that you're actually giving us culinary analogies to jokes.
I'm trying.
It's like I can almost visualize you in your kitchen making dahi like jokes. It's phenomenal. Life is dahi, man. Dahi FTW. But listen, laughter is also an addiction, especially when it's coming from someone who you made laugh. Is the temptation to go back to something that's made people laugh too much? Sometimes that comfort zone can be a bit of a double-edged sword. No, it can be a bit of a trap. No.
Okay. Let's say like a balloon, right? This is an analogy I'd given to somebody to explain the difference between horror, thriller, and comedy would be. In a simplistic analogy, of course, void of too many complication, is that if a balloon is full of air, and air, let's say, is tension, right? And if you release it, like, if you burst it, poof, there's horror, all right? Or if you keep it holding for very long, and you're like about to release, but you're not, there's a little bit of thriller. But if you just hold it, and if you throw it and it goes and hits on your face, then it's kind of like another shock that you got. So you're either laughing, or you're offended by it, or you're like attached by like, hey, why did you do it? Or if you just hold it and you just release it in a certain way that it goes. Some people might find it funny. Some people will be like, hey, this is too juvenile. So all of these emotions elicit the same thing. It's how you play with tension. So doing comedy is walking the tightrope. There is, if you're doing the absolute other end of it, then you are catering to an audience that would like that, very light comedy and very like, hey, just keep it simple. Some people like the extremes of it because there is an audience that likes it. So, when I mean that you really are finding your voice, you're literally finding the people who like the vibe and tone that you have personally, which is why it is towing the lines here and there. But that's where I think, as all art forms, not just comedy, like, any videographer, anyone who's making cinema or writing, who are pushing the boundaries of what we are uncomfortable with, the first reaction would also be, it won't be humor. So it is good to kind of jokes about that we are a little bit more researched on, because then you can give slightly more holistic view, which is why I think that as a comedian, at least I'm growing from like whatever is first, which is stereotypes. Then let's say whatever my friends say, not realizing my friend circle might just be mostly men and not women. And then probably talk. I think with each thing we're kind of becoming, because technically I'm just 2008 onwards I did stand up, right? So I'm just like a, what, 12? 12, 8. Forgot. How much is it?
13.
So
I think,
it's just a 13-year-old baby. Like when I'm 25 years old, I'll be a 25-year-old adult in comedy. So you have to look at it like at it infancy right now. Comedy as an infancy for me.
But there's also extraneous circumstances, Abish. I mean, the fact that I know for a fact that you would never consciously try and hurt someone. You would never, as they say, I think the terminology is punch down. You'd never consciously punch down. But
Right.
then, of course, as you said, reaction is so secular because everyone has their own and the right to their own. And then there was the roast, which
Yeah.
which is probably a great example of how that tightrope that you walk can be agitated by someone else, and you
Yeah.
end up falling to a side that you might not want to fall on.
But to be honest, man, it's just I don't know. I think with stand up, it's also slightly more sharper, where because it's using exactly speech and dissonance, or like calling it out, or like finding new formats. So I think the format of a roast is one of the very edgy ones, right? And I think we as comedians were already thinking of what to do next. So we were making the roast just for our 1 million people who watch our stuff. Just we have as comedians, we had like a 1 million people reach through all the people who had done social media stuff, or had done live stand up. So it was that. But the roast exposed us without us realizing to like maybe a larger audience, that we who were school students who went to college together, who were working in the same industry and are affiliate, and then we created that. So that the bubble just became slightly bigger to absorb more perspective. So it's almost like that. You're in a dark room, you're just putting like flashlight to see what all is around.
But was this, I mean, in a way, was this in a very limited way reverse cultural appropriation in that way? I mean, a roast is so much a part of, say, an American society. They're used to it because they've been seeing it for decade upon decade, and suddenly, we can't really talk too much about the Indian thick skin because there isn't any. I mean, the offense-taking business is a little more strident here. So you think that that was a calculation gone wrong a little?
With the roast as such?
Yeah. And how did you become part of the roast?
Okay, so very interesting. So the roast as a format is not what you would say culturally or artistically from the South continent, like our subcontinent, right? India, Pakistan, Nepal, consider China, all of that. We have a very different sensibility of humor because there have been the format of stand-up that we call pop culture, the Jerry Seinfeld onwards, which is standing. It is very, in its deep root, it's vaudevillian. So there used to be a host who used to run these things. Then stand-up comedy picked up. Then some clubs. There's a whole history behind it. So it's like hip-hop. But India always had a performative form of stand-up. Like in Kerala, there are two forms of comedy where, like Dastan Goi, for example,
Yes.
if you see, it's hilarious, right? And it has moments of it. It's a performance grade. So I think, let's say, if that was a sense of performance, stand-up is, let's say, an adapted version of it in its simplicity of like, the microphone and an audience. That's it. If you can just with that limitation do the job, then you don't need to play with light. Then you don't need to play with audio because then you're making it a performance. So I think somewhere it became like a very simple atomic understanding of communicating with a bare minimum skill, which is of communication, which anybody who can speak, regardless of the lisps or stuttering, can still communicate. So that's the beauty of stand-up in its own thing. You just need somebody to listen to and you're making them laugh. So
the important thing about communication there, Abish, is what struck me, that communication also necessarily needs a vocabulary for it to be expressed. In that way, as you said, that a lot of our vocabulary was borrowed. As you said, vaudeville, the monologue, the roast, etc. But do you think that we are in a way, we are on our way to making our own language of comedy? Are we making our own vocabulary now? Because you were also, sort of affected by the tyranny of numbers, where YouTube was asking how many numbers can you get, etc., etc. But then you made your own way. You sort of, went into the Son of Abish format, etc., etc. So, do you think that there's a vocabulary that's being made that is our own, or are we still living mostly on borrowed vocabularies?
Oh, not at all. I think the vocabulary has completely shifted. I think as soon as it's just like there was a sense of like, okay, this is a format which makes me communicate and make people laugh, and that's why we, as a community, we were fans of stand-up comedy as a performing art. So we all started doing it because there was just 10 of us fans who were there who wanted to do comedy. I didn't do comedy, and I didn't quit radio and do comedy. I was earning in radio, and the day I realized that my monthly salary of my stand-up, which I'm doing over the weekend, is just above what I would make out of a job, I was like, this makes sense to my Catholic parents to be like, hey, this is a logical move. And it worked because it was an economic. I am the second born, so I have some responsibilities and my brothers can't take it up, right? So I was just like, I have something to do. But then luckily what happened is this, like that vocabulary completely shifted in the days in Delhi as well. Because there's when we are telling a story, some people tell a great, amazing story and make it funny. Some people just observe something and make it funny. All of these are good formats of comedy that everyone started doing organically. Some people saw that as a format and started replicating it and then found their own style and pace of it. So this is beautiful. The format of stand-up is a beautiful illusion that it's all the same, but once you come in, you will find your own way. Somebody from outside might not be able to tell it, but once you come inside, you're like, oh, this is that kind of like, you created a new form of a joke, which is incredible. So the vocabulary has shifted. I would say the cadence of performance has shifted. Because if you see a lot of international comics, their references are, of course, very different, right? Our references, the way we use is very different as well. Like in the sense, when I'm performing, I'm not completely, मतलब थोड़ी बहुत हिंदी में बात हो जाती है, right? Like, and then you bring it back. Sometimes I know if my punchline says "pa patti," they will get that I'm Mallu what Mallu. It's the beauty of subtlety is there because everyone's a little aware. That's what I think is amazing about this thing of it. Yeah, sorry.
The other thing, of course, is that subtlety is right now being sort of sacrificed at the altar of maybe I don't know if politics is the right word or not, but do you think that the space for expression is shrinking? Especially we've seen that in the world of comedy the suffering has been pretty much straight on. There was no subtlety in what happened to say a Munawwar or what happens to a Kunal Kamra. Do you think that has an impact on the next generation of comedians who might be coming in the way of their choice of subject for comedy?
Yeah. I mean, it is 100% happening even to me. Not just new people who are coming to comedy. Everybody is... See, the good thing is that you're learning and in one way, but the other side is sometimes I feel also... How do I put it in a way that captures because this is the entire comedy sentiment is very tough to explain. But instead of saying what it's done to us, let's just tell you what it's done to the art form. Because let me put it that way. The ability to tell your opinion, which is a representation of, say, about 10,000 people who speak or from your community or your village or that, can't be spoken because there's like a huge impact of it. So I can't talk about... there's always double thought and triple thought, and there's always all that's going on. And if this is done organically, like a community is offended because you've used a word, then it's an opportunity to learn, reflect, and then make those corrections. But on the other side, if it's being politicized, I just feel like let them speak, and people who are offended can speak as well. That makes sense. But when you bring in a judicial case in situations like this, you're hitting artists who are trying to figure their artistic life out, and now you put a detriment in their career or their freedom or their boldness by a decade of psychological like impact or even like fear of life, then you give up, and then that shrinks that art form, so to speak. So I'm being very selfish speaking about the art form. Now, if you want to take that to like, but who else is, there'll be enough people who will keep getting like, but I feel like that really restrains us. So it's good to learn, absorb, say something, learn something and continue. It's the wave. It's when you're shutting the wave down as I'm like, man, we're just building up to a momentum.
Are you also second guessing your content? Because I do know, I follow you, of course, and I see that you also express your opinion. And there's, I've also been talking to a lot of protest musicians as well. And, some of them are, of course, right up there and saying, okay, we will say what we want to say. But there are some who are also saying that this is also an opportunity for us to see how creative we can get in our expression, where we can say something keeping our safety in mind as well and keeping sentiments in mind as well, yet making our point. But are you, as a practitioner of an art, second guessing your content, looking at it twice or thrice to see whether it would get you in trouble? Are you doing that? Has this forced you to think like that?
Ah, wow, that is a bacon wrapped in bacon question.
It's okay if you don't want to answer.
No.
I
I'm just
completely
trying
understand.
because it's a two-winded answer. So the thing is, can you rephrase that for me one more time?
Yeah. So essentially what I'm saying is that when you are making content in the current scenario,
Ha.
are you rethinking your content? Are you second guessing your content? Or are you being forced to look at your content in a certain way instead of having the freedom to treat the subject of your content, if that makes sense?
Yeah, now it completely makes sense. So, Sarthak, this is a very interesting point of a artist's mindset also. There is, while you have external factors, which are extremely like, you have to think twice, you have to do this, shit, this should be nice. On a personal context also, whatever as human beings we are going through also gets internalized a little, right? So if it's the perfect mix of politically, I don't know if I should be safe, and the internal of my joke isn't funny. Because see, by the end of it, I still need to make sure that my credibility as a comedian, or when I mean a comedian, my credibility of as a humorist maintains. So when you say like a lot of people build their art and their thought opinion perfectly and they release, I think that's a beautiful thing I strive to get to. I haven't. Like I said, I'm still learning how to mix true, honestly, this is what I feel. I want to talk about it. That passion of I want to talk about this, there's fear in that. So then I'm like, let's see what I can talk about it. You see the difference? Where I need to make sure it's funny, otherwise I'm not going to put it out, because then I might as well not be a humorist. Sure. I would be let's say a public speaker about a certain activistic topic that I feel about. But I feel a lot about making an audience laugh. But I feel about this, I'm trying to find that perfect balance. Like a lot of good comedians, like one of the most evergreen bits a friend of mine introduced me was George Carlin's environmentalist bit. And then Stuff, which was another bit. Then Robin Williams, another bit. So all these pieces, for me, felt like they wanted to talk about it. And it was the passion of the performance. So right now, I have to double guess of what do I really want to talk about. So I think for me, that does make a second guess. And then let's go into slightly more simplistic, family-friendly style. Which is, of course, a beautiful style to have. I would like that style. But a lot of comedians might not have that. They're performing to their friends. That's what comedy is. I'm performing to, in my head when I'm doing comedy, I'm performing to my family. So I can do a few risky jokes because I'm like, they'll get offended, but they won't go, I can push that boundary with my family.
Sure.
So I think that's what I mean.
Also, there's there's of course the practice of the art and the responsibility of the art. Do you think, as a community and as an individual practitioner as well, do you think that responsibility is being fulfilled right now of the art that you have towards your art? Or do you think that is not something that needs to be figured out anymore?
100%. It's like, when they say pass your privileges, right? I think you need to pass the privileges at all states of your privilege, not just at the epitome of your, like, I am charging this much per corporate show. So no. It's about even when you're at an open mic. So I feel like talking about stuff that you're not passionate about is what opportunist is. But if you spend enough years in the same in this art form, you will go from your generic, let's make Gujaratis are cheap and Punjabis are loud, to coming to like, hey man, I used to date this girl, I went on this girl, then like, oh my god, I just got married, here are my marriage jokes, blah, blah, blah. Then here like, oh my god, here are my divorce jokes, here, oh my kids are so bad jokes, or here are what is the dealing with death joke, oh my god, this is my So you have a lifetime of specials if you have to look at your life as a comedian. So then it's that important. So you're working at it like it's the work of art I want to leave behind. But sometimes that's too much pressure. But that ability to go on again is, I think, what... I don't know if I'm getting your question correctly, but we have 6 or 7 big bits that we'll really enjoy doing.
Sure.
So I want to create things like that. So the second guessing isn't as political as much as that it's got to be great quality, but these are these amazing things that I feel passionate about. I can't connect right now because I don't have the, let's say, the skill of navigating it as well.
There's also this whole thing. You're a comic, and this is getting to be a very serious discussion.
Sorry, good point.
So on a scale of 1 to grinding your teeth in half, how annoying is the question? Hey, you're a comedian. Why don't you tell me a joke, yaar?
Not at all, man. I enjoy it. It's amazing. You know why? Because people come and they do 2 things, okay? Number one is, hey man, why don't you tell me a joke? Or the other one is, hey man, I have this story. You can use it in your set. That is patronizing max, and it's amazing. It is amazing because they, like, if you look at it from an alien perspective, okay, it's a stranger who's watching, let's say, somebody who's been learns a living, and there's somebody who's doing something else, like probably a CEO of a company coming and saying that here's a joke, you should do it. It's almost like I'd be like, yeah, here's some investment plan and an HR manager that you need to fix, and you remember your interns you haven't paid. Do I want to tell them how to do their jobs? So I do what you do when every time your boss cracks a joke. You're so funny. You are definitely a client for, I would charge you 10 lakhs maybe. Yeah, 10 lakhs worth. This is a 10 lakhs worth laugh.
Yeah. I will monetize my misery. But there's always, like, as I said, that our references will, of course, be Western, because, as you said, we have a very Western privilege in that way as well. And we've seen through, I've grown up again on a diet of George Carlin, as I'm assuming you would have as well, as far as comedic, Craig Ferguson, Conan O'Brien, George Carlin. In that way, Jon Stewart, in that way.
I lost you. 1 second.
Okay.
Is it just me, guys?
I can hear you.
Sorry,
I can hear you. Can you? Yeah. So we've been brought up on a diet of people like George Carlin, Jon Stewart, Conan O'Brien, etc. In a way, to me, it was very natural for comedy to reflect the state of the society in that way, because it was a bit of a weather vane for society. Do you think that's happening or can happen with the Indian comic scene? You think that can happen?
I think as far as us... Okay, so I think definitely to realize stand-up as an art form that is newer, if new fans of stand-up comedy keep coming, it'll be impossible to go across the world and hit 12 billion people and tell them the the performance art form called stand-up comedy. There will always be enough people to be like, ye kya hota hai, at any part of the world, right? So of course, that means we're that small bubble. That's just growing. Now, a lot of people know what that is, but a lot of people have never seen it. Their idea of stand-up is already now slightly dented, let's say. But the point is to be like, there's a plethora. It's just an art form of it. So I think the audience is growing now. Fortunately or unfortunately, what has happened is because of all the miseries like a lot of fellow comedians, men and women, had to go through with multiple things that's happened, legal, social, and all of that's come in. a lot of people have started paying attention towards what this form of art is, our performance art is. So two things have started happening. We ourselves have started thinking of who else is watching. Because remember, stand-up was always about making that 50 or 1,000 or 10,000 people in a live environment laugh. That's it. Cameras is how to capture it. But it is about that live element. So I think somewhere in this quick digital age, everyone's forgetting that we are stand-up comedians. We know how to make a room work with our jokes because that room has paid money to come watch me. They get full context of me. So suddenly when the doors are fully open, then it's a museum. And sometimes you won't find, or let's say a art gallery, some people might not find the nude painting as pleasing of mine, but some people might find something else more pleasing of it, or somebody. So it's stand-up is about like that live room capture. So it's good that all of us have started thinking of like, nahi, ye offensive ho sakta hai. It might have started off like, oh my god, ye offensive ho sakta hai, because it takes more effort. But I think it kind of also, I don't know, I'm still on the path, so I can't tell, I feel like for me, I'm kind of liking this thing of like thinking on all aspects, so that at least I cover all aspects and then I decide what's funny and all right for me and my audience, which is the people who like my work.
Which leads me to the audience question as well. I mean, there's the telling of a joke and there's the reception of a joke.
Yeah.
How have you seen the audiences change from when you started to now where you are?
Okay, very interesting. When we started stand-up, Sarthak, you would know this, we used to go to clubs and live venues, right, which are adult men and women coming to these places, like people who above the age of 25 minimum to enter. Some of these places were coffee shops. Again, people used to be there, but this performance art was an adult performance art. Like it was meant for people to come and talk and laugh. Of course, the access availability to younger audiences were not allowed. That's why a college set is very different from a public set and a club set. So the audience was, let's say, more receptive, a little bit more experienced, wanted to have
we've lost Abish,
time.
na?
I think that slowly what started.
Abish, we lost you briefly there. We lost you. So yeah, you were saying it was an adult venue.
So I was saying that these were all like venues where adults 25 above at least used to come, or like even basically you were working. It was still word of mouth, so kind of you would know at least one person in the audience. Then it grew to like a slightly larger venues where people were buying tickets for comedy and not for a comedian. So I feel like the audience at that time was like the people who are out to do anything new, and then some people who heard about it, so they were curious. There was a little bit more attraction from the audience. Then came a phase where the audience wanted to just get to watch the comedian. Like people want to watch this comic or this comic or this comic, which also grew for the comedian. Then the open mics kept sustaining, like, newer people coming out. So in general, I think the audience has gone from very few people who like to watch stuff to like a lot more people who have an idea of stand-up, but when they come, they get entertained and they go back saying, today we experienced something new. Because at that time it was word of mouth. Now it's just like, I want to experience what this is. I don't think the live audience gets offended as much. They are with you, they laugh, they get it. That's why anyone who comes to a live show, when they leave, they're usually not offended as much as confused. And that's a good comedy show, I feel, right? You leave them, I'm laughing, but he did talk about my cancer that I went through that day. And you're laughing, but you're like, that's true. When I was there, I was extracting sympathy out of people. When I was there, I was extracting sympathy out of people all the time. It's writing a bit that they really enjoyed. It'll make them confused, but they'll feel like something new. Which, by the way, honestly, I did once. There was an audience member who was in the front row, and he's a cancer survivor, and he was super jovial. He is super jovial. So I was talking to the audience, and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I just survived cancer." Okay. And I, at that time as a comedian, I'm like, oh no, I shouldn't have gone there. I don't know what to do. I can't leave it also, because then he's somebody who survived and is strong about it, because he spoke about it saying that don't treat me like any other different. So then I was like, okay, so did you enjoy the sympathy you were getting, and the entire audience froze, and he burst out laughing, and the entire audience laughed because they were
Sure.
like, they were offended for that comic, for that person, for that time.
Yeah.
But that person laughed, and it was like a full. It's how you play that tension. Unfortunately, online, you're just getting to see the explosion and not the play with the tension that happens live.
Yeah.
So out of context, it's mostly like, doesn't come out as well.
You don't. Are you one of the brigade who does not enjoy the online shows, or is there? I mean, how's that been? Oh,
Okay, I'll tell you what. I love anything that has an audience. Okay, like this is great, but I know right now Ravina and Avik are at the back. If their camera was on, I would be performing very differently because when there's an audience, you want to do a little bit more. When the audience reduces and there's not a single audience member, this is a very different vibe. Sarthak, you're a friend, you're not an audience, and plus you're interviewing me. But if you give me one person on camera, my objective will be to entertain them.
sure.
So I think that is the main difference, is like I need a person. So online shows on Zoom, I love it because I can see people's faces. I can ask them, thoda left karo, ye kya hai? I talk to them. I enjoy doing that a lot.
Sure.
So yeah, for me,
But there are
online
lots
shows
of
are great.
you know, there are lots of people who are also being attracted by the glamour of stand-up comedy in that
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
and not really being told completely about about the pitfalls, about the kind of heartbreak that it takes as well. So, what would you say to someone who's been attracted to stand-up comedy as a profession, be it for glamour or for anything else? What would your advice be?
Man, if you're attracted to stand-up, if anyone is attracted to stand-up comedy, I would say 100% go and start watching live shows. Because you need to realize that every video you've seen online, every comedy special you've seen online, everything you've seen online is just a portion of what makes a live stand-up so good. Imagine our videos we put online. All of us do this for our marketing, because we want people to come to our live shows. Even though live shows will not even equal the amount of payment that you'll have doing your Instagram stuff and YouTube and creating, because brands will be interested, blah, different journey. Live is where we all workshop. So that is why I'm saying go and watch how these guys do it. Go and see, oh, okay, this is offensive. How did the audience react to it? Then take the bold step, or do the other way, which is what I'm trying to do, which is like, forget everything, book yourself an open mic spot. Just book yourself that first open mic spot and book the next one and book the next one, because you do it once, you will bomb or you will do great, but you will not want to leave it unfinished. You'll be like, people laughed at this. But people, that curiosity will start. And I think either the curiosity and the passion will take it ahead. The popularity, like you said, asked me today, I'm just very lucky that stand-up comedy picked up, because I left radio to do stand-up 2000. At that time, there was no... I left to Bombay because I wanted to do more stand-up. That's it. There was no pop, because I was going to write, I was going to do voiceovers, I was looking at different sources of income so that I can be close to stand-up. So till today, I'm just very lucky that I make money off this. Otherwise, in an alternative universe, if stand-up didn't pick, I would have been an assistant creative director in an ad agency and in moonlighting as like a stand-up comedian. I want to feel my passion, but I'm stuck with my corporate job. But like, don't I look like if you
Finding
remove
content
me as,
out of misery.
yeah,
again.
I'll be working for one of those companies. Give me a meme for this, please. I need to upload that meme and put this in that. So,
Yeah, but finally, you were host for Comicstan, and then you were creative director for Comedy Premium League, where some of the biggest names in comedy were curated together, etc. What was that experience like, and do you think that's good for the comedy scene? What do you think that does for the comedy scene? Let's not go to good or bad.
yeah, I think it's great. Just a little correction. I am the host of Comic Sun, and I was the creative supervisor on CPL.
I apologize.
And
yes, of
creative director was Sakshi Khanna, who is
Yeah.
this man. Okay, I'm going to start with CPL first. CPL was this amazing opportunity for me to, like, it's a big budget show, right? And I have worked behind the screen for Son of Abish, and I directed Kenny's special. Then I was creative director on another Netflix show, Comedians of the World. So I'd done a lot of back-end work. I wasn't doing enough on stage. I was more behind the camera. And I learned so much with my friends from the industry, right? They all gave me the opportunity to learn as an artist to become this. So when I was on CPL and I was creative supervisor, right? There is a creative director who's come from television background. There's a team of people who've shot half of the comedians who are there. It's a big cast. There's a lot of managers. There's a lot of things happening. I was creative supervisor, which basically meant I just had to um, kind of give my opinions where it's possible. But Sarthak, it was amazing because I saw a lot of people work and I saw like, that's what even I would have done. Okay, good, good. And I saw, oh, I would have done it the other way. Oh, actually, their method is better. So there are times that I'm like, no, my method is correct. But like 2 months later, I'm like, oh, acha, they thought it through. There were 2, 3 things that I figured out, which nobody else. So I kind of saw that from a structure slightly above the hierarchy where I could see a little bit more, whatever was accessible to me as such. So it was like a amazing internship, but actually hours of use. So I think the level of learning that I got, that now I can be like, I think I know how to make a X amount of budget show because of my skill of absorbing since for 8 years doing Son of Abish, and not 8 years, whatever, 6 years doing Son of Abish, and now figuring. So it was beautiful there. As host of Comic Stand, it's different because I am the face. So when the cameras cut, okay, Sarthak, it's not like I go off stage and somebody and the music is playing and the audience is talking. Camera goes off stage, we are talking to the audience because the camera crew and the directors want the footage. We as stand-up comedians want the audience.
Of course.
So I was like, yo, I don't care, you cut your camera, I want my mic on. And everyone gets that. All comedians chip in, our co-hosts chip in, our contestants chip in. We make it like a podcast to give them a great experience because that is the badge of honor I think we all wear, which is like live, we are fantastic. We might fail at our jokes, but we'll have a good time.
But absolutely, that's important. So yeah, and finally, what's your? There's a show. Your show is not going particularly well. You get a feeling that it's bombing. Do you have like a go-to joke that?
Oh yes.
What is it? Tell us.
Oh man. Okay, here's rule number 1. If you ever think your joke is bombing, try to address your joke is bombing once.
Huh.
Okay, then there are multiple. But I'll tell you what I do. When one joke bombs, I have another few jokes that I'll get to. But joke bombing isn't bad. You can address it and get the audience laugh. Bombing for an hour is where real agony is at. Again, let me explain. A joke takes 20 seconds, so if they don't laugh, you can be like, fine, I'll write better jokes. Charming, endearing person. What next do they have? They go for the next joke and the same reaction. That's 40 seconds. Then you do the third joke thinking that, oh my God, the first 2 haven't worked. How will I do the rest of the hour? You do the third one and it doesn't work. And then that same pattern repeated for an hour. People getting up, leaving, going for a starting 200-seater, left with my then girlfriend sitting there and nobody else, just a few people who had arthritis who can't get up or seated. That is what I'm explaining. My first ever 1-hour show I ever did. So the thing that I did at that time when my show was bombing was I did the I think, which is my go-to. Have a good night. My name is Abish Mathew. Hopefully see you guys soon. Walk off! Walk off! Because they are like, we want to like you, but I don't know. So just euthanize your entire set.
Yeah, that's great. The temptation is very high to say, "Oye, yaar, jaane se pehle ek joke to suna de, Abish." But no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let people discover, those who haven't discovered already, Son of Abish's stand-up specials, Abish's little reels on Instagram. Just check them out and you'll know what he does. A joke or two here is not really going to make that much of a difference. But
I mean, I can do one of my classics from 2008. One of the first few jokes. Again, I tried on radio. This is my calling card. Okay, knock knock.
Who's there?
Abish.
Abish who?
Abish, seen you soon. Am I out of frame? Wait, hold on. Sorry. This is wait. I have to move a full exit. Otherwise, the joke doesn't work. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Okay. That empty frame is actually Abish, who's going to come back into frame, finishing the joke, because finishing the joke is extremely important, and finishing this podcast is as well. This has been a very enlightening conversation, actually. People do not realize that it takes a whole lot of work to get someone to laugh. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do, and you've been doing that consistently for a very, very long time. And for sharing what goes on behind what those laughs mean, we would like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, Abish. This has been absolutely wonderful. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's Abish Mathew, son of Abish. Check them out. There's season upon season upon season. So there's hour upon hour of joy there. And I hope you derive some joy from what we did right here on the Teamwork Arts podcast. And thank you very much for listening. We'd be absolutely giddy with joy if you could tell us what you think about what we do. It'll be great. So leave comments, follow us, whatever it is. That's Abish Mathew. My name is Sarthak. This is the Teamwork Arts podcast. Thank you for giving us the privilege of listening.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, subscribe to our channel now. We have a new episode out every Friday.